All right, we are entering the election season, so let's talk about the Electoral College. The Electoral College. So every 4 years, on the first Tuesday in November, the United States citizens head to the voting polls. They cast their votes for a variety of issues, but one of the most important things they vote on and who they will elect to be President of the United States. They also vote to elect the President as well. Did you know, though, that a group of people take our votes and then make their own decision in December? This sounds like it is unfair, but let's find out why our presidential elections are set up like this. In 1787, the Constitutional Convention voted to establish the Electoral College. The leaders of our country wanted their citizens to have a say in who was president, but they also wanted to make sure that people who specialized in government and knew more about politics made the final decision. The general citizens cast their vote in November. Then, in December, the delegates cast their own vote. They used the data from the citizens' elections in November to make their decision. Almost always, a delegate will follow the lead of their citizens and vote how their citizens ask them to. In some states, it is legal to vote against your citizens' wishes. In other states, it is illegal to do so. Every state in the United States has a different number of electors. This number is based on population, and it can change from census to census. The number of electors is equivalent to the number of senators and representatives from that state. For example, Georgia has 16 electoral voters. They have 2 senators and 14 representatives in our Congress, so, therefore, they receive 16 electoral votes. The state with the most electoral votes is California, which has 55. And there are several small states, including D.C., who have 3 electoral votes each. To win the election, a candidate must win 270 of the 538 total electoral votes. When George Washington was president, the United States had 69 electoral votes. As we have grown, we now have 538 electoral votes. As more people move to the United States, we'll have more electoral votes to represent the population. We'll know more once the 2020 census is complete. All right, go answer these 4 questions based on your reading. So, when was the Electoral College set up? Who set up the Electoral College? How was the number of electors decided? And how many electoral votes are there now? So the Electoral College. Who can serve as an Electoral College member? There is a law in place that prohibits people who have committed treason or who have somehow otherwise hurt the United States from becoming an elector. Senate and House of Representatives members are also not allowed to be electors. Otherwise, each state has its own methods for nominating Electoral College electors. How does the state determine who wins their electoral votes? In 48 of our 50 states, as well as Washington, D.C., the majority rules. The presidential candidate with the most votes cast by citizens wins the electoral votes for that state. In Nebraska and Maine, however, electoral votes can be split between candidates as the electors see fit. Is it possible for a candidate not to get enough electoral votes? Yes. There are 538 votes available, and it's possible for candidates to win less than 270 votes each. If this happens, the House of Representatives takes charge. Each state gets 1 vote, and the candidate with the most votes wins. Is it true that a president and a vice president from 2 different parties could win the election? Yes. Electors from the president and for the president and the vice president. Electors vote for the president and the vice president separately. It is possible for a president to win with a vice president whom they did not campaign with. It has never happened, but it is possible. Is the system of elections unique? Absolutely. The United States set itself apart from other countries because most democracies have a majority wins election process where the citizens have the final say. In the United States, political experts listen to the citizens, and these experts have the final say. There are pros and cons to our system. All right, go fill in these answers. You're going to drag the correct answer up into the box. So while doing your handstand to look at this map, this is a map of the Electoral College and the electors that each state has. So you can see here that Ohio has 18. California has 55 at the largest, then Texas has 38, New York has 29. Those are some of our big states. You can see Delaware, D.C., Vermont, Alaska, all have 3. Some of the states out west, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, have 3. So it varies based on population. Meet the faithless electors. Over the years in which electors have been voting in presidential elections on behalf of the citizens of their state, a handful of electors have taken the rebellious step of voting for someone other than they were supposed to. These electors, known as faithless electors, all have their reasons for doing so. Here are some of the faithful electors who have switched their vote throughout America's lifetime. So they were faithful until they switched their vote, and now they are faithless. So first we have Samuel Miles in 1796 in Federalist, PA, Pennsylvania. Samuel was the first faithless elector in the United States history. In 1796, Miles was supposed to vote for John Adams. He voted for Thomas Jefferson, who was a member of a competing party, instead. Miles's vote did not make a difference in the election. John Adams won the presidency, but his choice caused an uproar from Pennsylvania citizens. Then we have William Plummer Sr. in 1920 from New Hampshire. William Plummer was a Democratic-Republican elector who was voting in the 1820 election. Based on conversations amongst electors, everyone was going to vote for James Monroe to be the next president. Plummer did not agree that someone should win the presidency unanimously, so with no opposition, so he voted for another candidate instead. Monroe still became president. Then we have Henry D. Irwin in 1960. So we went from 1820 all the way to 1960 in Oklahoma. Henry was a member of the Republican Party, and as an elector for Oklahoma, pledged his vote to Richard Nixon. Irwin completed an interview with CBS, and during the interview stated that he could not stomach Nixon. Irwin did not want to vote for John F. Kennedy either, so he tried to organize enough votes to help a third candidate who wasn't on the original ballot to win. This effort did not work. Irwin voted for Harry Byrd, however, John F. Kennedy won the election. Then we have Roger McBride in 1972 from Virginia. McBride was a Republican elector who was voting in the 1972 election. He had originally pledged his vote to Richard Nixon, who was already president of the United States. However, McBride changed his vote for the Libertarian Party instead. The presidential candidate was Toni Nathan, and she was the first woman to ever receive an electoral vote in the United States. Margaret Leach, 1988, in West Virginia. Margaret Leach was an elector from West Virginia. During the election proceedings, Leach became aware that electors did not need to vote for the candidates to whom they had pledged their vote. This angered her, and she felt that this broke the trust between electors and voters. To bring attention to this so that the voting citizens knew about this rule, Leach switched her vote unexpectedly and voted for another candidate instead. Then we have Barbara Lett Simmons in 2000 from Washington, D.C. In the United States, Washington, D.C. is a territory, not a state. Because of this, there is only one member of the House of Representatives that represents D.C. However, the person is not allowed to vote in the House. Additionally, D.C. does not have a U.S. Senator to represent them. The 23rd Amendment does allow D.C. to have 3 electoral votes, even though it only has 1 member of Congress. Lett Simmons wanted to protest this, so she abstained from, or did not vote. And then in 2004, we have an unknown elector from Minnesota. 2004, Minnesota held their electoral voting session. One elector, who is anonymous because of secret voting, accidentally voted for John Edwards as president and as vice president. This mistake did not change the outcome of the election. All right, so an open-ended question for you to answer. Why might an elector decide to be faithless? All right, now that you have answered your question about faithless electors, look at these matching tiles. Go ahead, and what you will do is you will click on one, so like varies by state, and you will pick what thing that matches with. So like I know that where is it? Election day is the first Tuesday in November. So those are going to match. Go through and fill out the rest. Your next question is, why does the Electoral College exist? What is its purpose? Type your answer in here. Your next question is, which two states don't have a majority wins elector process? What process do they use instead? Make sure you write in complete sentences. So now you have the question, will the United States always have 538 electoral votes? Explain why or why not. And finally, you have this Google form for homework. There are 4 questions on this to complete, and they are related to all of this information being put together.